I'm Jason Klum, the host of the Comedy on Vinyl podcast. All of 2017, I'm listening to a comedy album a day. You can watch this full video at youtube.com/comedy on vinyl. Today I've picked 2004's Feelin Kinda Patton by Patton Oswalt, his first comedy album. This is a vinyl release of it later on. Really great fun art there, little cutouts of things you can play with to play along. It's a gatefold as well. Really great art on the inside. There's some other cutouts on the inside as well, and the vinyl is kind of this color, actually. It's a nice piece of vinyl. What's interesting, and I'm a huge fan of Patton Oswalt, is how you can tell this is 13 years ago by listening to it. Again, I enjoy Patton's work. I love his work. He earned one of the most well-deserved Grammys this year, no doubt about it. But listening to this, I've heard him talk about, oh, what an angry, young kid I was. Angry, yeah, definitely. But I honestly think some of these jokes, they're just not there. Not as much as I remember them being. Don't get me wrong. They're very funny, some of them. There's some funny lines, actually. That's kind of the bend over Abigail May, here comes the gravy pipe. Yeah, I get it. I mean, and it's the specificity is why his comedy works so well. And that's actually what this is. This is, an hour of just great, very solid specificity. I mean, that's what it is. He's just a great crafter of words, unlike myself right now, who's half asleep and exhausted. But I wanted to make sure I did an album, and specifically wanted to listen to some Patton. Yeah, it's those kind of jokes where he'll go into these, he'll weave a narrative by description. Even if there's no story, even if it's just a guy doing this and doing this, even to the point where somehow him saying flibbity flobbity flu is descriptive and somehow works. But I mean, there's just a lot of stuff on here that, for me, at least now, and again, I don't remember when I heard this last, and this is not the first I heard. I think I first heard Werewolves and Lollipops, probably. Here's the thing. I know he's not out to, be shocking, but that's not true. He's around 34 or so when he recorded this, 34, 35. He might have been. There's definitely a lot of this where, he talks about, well, there must be gay retarded people. Well, yes, of course. And then goes on I feel like to say gay and retarded as much as possible and do a voice. Which is weird, because I forgot that there was a point where Patton Oswalt would do that kind of humor, because I consider him to be one of the more open-minded comics out there. But he's also a guy who's kind of openly evolved as a comedian, and the internet has definitely helped him in as much as it's also been one of those things where he's a guy who doesn't necessarily bait trolls, but he likes to have fun with people who screw with him. He's the kind of guy who I've seen grow online in terms of, well, I didn't understand this, but I understand it now. And that's going to happen with any comedian. And I honestly think that within 13 years to see somebody go from this to his most recent album, it's kind of amazing, because I think there's some stuff on here that feels, again, no insult to him, but, I'm talking to his 35-year-old self here, a little hacky in terms of just some of the things that the jokes are about. They're not really jokes, and it's not the same thing as people used to accuse Dane Cook of, where it's like, hey, it sounds like a joke. It's like, no, they're definitely there, and they're the descriptors are so tightly woven. They're really well told. I just think a lot of the stuff there's not as much finesse as there is now to anything he does. He's one of the best stand-ups on the planet, and you can see it coming out here, but it's not there yet. And I was gonna say, I hope that's okay to say. I know it's okay to say, and I'm not hurting him. Again, I love his work. From what I could also tell, it seemed like side 2 is maybe a little bit stronger in terms of side 1. This is obviously not the full thing. He did a full-length release of all the material he did that night. That was not released on vinyl. But yeah, there are a couple things on here that are really great when he genuinely is not taking the power of a stand-up and just crapping on whatever annoys him. He does that well, but that's the stuff when it was less funny. But when he does genuinely crap on stuff like George W. Bush, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, like that's where you kind of feel the power coming through, what he can do. But I think by the time Werewolves and Lollipops comes around, again, I know he's even talked, he's talking about the weaknesses of his old comedy because that's what you do. But I really do, I'm going to have to revisit Werewolves and Lollipops now, obviously. But yeah, it's worth listening to if you want to listen to a comedian evolve. There's some people who are going to still find this funny and are not going to be annoyed by the same things I am. But I definitely think he's, so heavily improved that you're not listening to the same guy you would be now. But definitely worth listening to in terms of seeing how he evolved. Yeah, that's it. You can subscribe at Comedy on Vinyl wherever you go. Subscribe here on YouTube if you're watching it here on YouTube, because of course you are. I keep saying these things. That's about it. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, have a good thing.